to another episode of Sporting Directions, proudly sponsored by Tsunami Teamwear, with me, Simon Atkinson.
And myself, Tavis Roberts.
For those of you new to the show and new to Sporting Directions, this whole podcast is aimed at providing some ideas, guidance for those of you wanting to pursue a career in sport and the industry as a whole. Over the course of this first series, we'll be interviewing a range of professionals from various different areas of the sporting world, getting them to share some of their amazing stories, getting them to share with us some of their ups, some of their downs, and we'll be having them share with us some amazing advice for any of you wanting to pursue a career in sport. Now, today we have with us Sally Lee and Dean Sharples, both of which are sport tech innovators and the directors of Auto Coach, specializing in smart sport tech innovations to support coaches, athletes, and organizations around the world. So, welcome Sally, welcome Dean.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Sally.
A good starting point for us would be to have you share with us a little bit more about what it is you do. So if you could tell our listeners what it is you actually do, what your career, what your industry is actually all about.
So Sally and I were both involved with digital technology. We used to sell to telecommunications companies like Telstra and also in China Telecom. So it was nothing to do with sport. So it was pretty much to do with digital technology. And we got involved in sport simply because we both liked sport as we both grew up. Also, our kids started to get involved in sport. So we were volunteers. Sally was their basketball coach. I ended up actually having to do a coaching course for swimming because their kids did swimming and their coach didn't turn up too much. So we sort of got roped into things. When the digital tech started to drop down in using copper wires in China, we thought, let's do sports tech because we thought that there was a lot of opportunities for us in automating some of the boring things we had to do.
And also special, I was playing basketball when I was young in China. So I feeling very strong for this sport is very, very important for the children to go in for person education. So I was playing the individual sport and also team sport and give our all different benefits. So when I was involved for the kids in Australia in the sport, I really want to have making individual sport like a team sport can let the kids really enjoy and continue to do it.
Sally and Dean, it sounds really interesting to hear that you transitioned your career from telecommunications into sports technology. And it sounds like it was all on behalf of your children. As you said, you were a basketball coach or a swimming coach. When you decided to go into sports technology using your digital skills, most people become entrepreneurs to fill a gap in the market or to use a product that they think is missing. What was the gap in the market that you wanted to provide for your own children?
Sports tech 10 years ago, the most popular sports tech people had was like a fitness tracker, like a step counter or something like that. You know, the Apple Watches were coming out and they counted your steps. They didn't really get that when you do anything to do with sport, you're working with people and the technology has to understand you're dealing with humans and that humans are motivated by feelings. And if you want someone to regularly do sport, they need to be motivated. They need to be given the right feedback at the right time. Otherwise, they'll stop doing it and get bored. And we chose swimming mainly because it was the hardest one to do. So it needed the most improvement because when you're swimming, your head's in the water. You're not in communication with anyone. The bond between the teacher / coach or whatever and the athlete is the weakest. So therefore, we could improve it the most. So we gave ourselves a tough challenge and we weren't quite sure whether we could actually meet it.
So there is can say two key important. One is the communication, the coach in the pool deck and the kids in the water. Second is about real time, how to get in feedback and how to emotion engage themselves to keep going. So real time feedback, real time correction information, and real time improvement. So that is the two keys: communication and real time
It's really important to be able to get real-time communication with your coach. As you said and highlighted, having the correct feedback at the correct time can make a big difference, especially in a technical sport like swimming. Was there anything that sort of inspired you to go in this way? Like, why did you choose to go this way? Attack this angle and focus on communication and real-time communication.
Well, I'm an electronics engineer, so engineers pretty much not normally that creative. They sort of do development work. However, I suppose I'm a bit of an unusual engineer in that I'm a creative, and also I'm really get bored easily. So the last thing I'm going to do is a status quo. But what I didn't just dream it up. The head coach of where our daughter and son swimming club, who was an Olympic swimming coach, Ian Pope, I went up to him and said, look, I'm wanting to develop some new technology. If I had a magic wand and could grant all your wishes, what would you want some tech or whatever to do? So I actually posed the question to someone that's been doing it for 30 years, and he gave me a list of priorities. And then I said, I'm going to watch you work and watch your swimmers for a week. And that was easy because I had to go to training anyway, drop the kids off. And I'm going to study what you do and work out how we can make it better and more interesting for both you and the swimmers. And that was how we developed what the problem was. And then we worked out what technology we can use to do it. So if there was no problem there and he was happy and said he didn't need anything, that would have been the end of it.
No, I like that. That's fantastic, and I've taken down an awful lot of really important notes from that. Just picking up on what both of you have had to say, and some of the real lessons I'd like to point out for anyone that's listening is definitely push the boundaries. Be creative. I love that idea from yourself, Dean. Be creative and be a bit different. Don't be afraid to be a little bit different. I think we're all a little bit different in our own way, but it's those differences that allow us to push forward and achieve something no one else has achieved. And it's fantastic to hear that both of you, and the word you used was, we did swimming because it was the hardest. And I like that. You weren't afraid to take on a challenge. You weren't afraid to really test yourselves, and from that, it seems you've had some fantastic success. What I'd like to ask you to share with our listeners is what, in your opinion, has been one of, if not your greatest accomplishment in this field, in this industry?
The most successful for our company, we have actually from what we like the big innovation. So we actually already very deeply to solve a lot of problem and created the really and completely the real-time race timing system, and the data, live data inside can for coach, swimmer, and the organize. So that means we are already completely finished the timing, training, and race system, and all in one can being used daily and also can become a proof big racement. So that was very successful in the system development. And also we actually, we can't say it's successful in the business in another way. So because of the beginning, we're doing for, but the not successful actually move on, we completely the whole systems for the special for swimming industry?
For me, it was actually a very easy question for me to answer. After a few years of developing the technology, we actually sold some equipment to the Australian Paralympic team. And I was at a conference about 4 or 5 years ago, and a guy there, well, there are two people there that are pretty famous around the world. One of them's guy's name is Scooter, and he's a person with very small stature, and he rides around on this little scooter. And another person that he trains with is Ahmed Kelly, who's got basically just stumps for his arms and legs. And they went up and said, thank you. When we do training, it is boring as hell. All the able-bodied swimmers are leaving us for dead, but your equipment lets us train against ourselves. And thank you. So that really made me feel good that these people had come up and they use it every day. And they talk about it, our equipment, like it's a religion. rather than just a system, which is, I've gone the auto coach way. So when customers have faults on any of our equipment, they send it back and say, how quickly can you get it back? Because we can't coach without it.
That's amazing. And that's a real compliment to what it is you're doing for sport. And I think anyone listening needs to hear that, sport, again, is this huge industry with all these different arms and all these different departments and, all these different backroom people who are making the athletes better. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're giving these athletes a platform to become better, and to have that sort of compliment from world-renowned athletes, and to see how dependent they're becoming on your technology, and knowing that technology is going to get better and better and better. The world of sport is becoming more and more exciting because of the technology and the backroom staff and what you are doing to support these athletes. We spoke about your greatest achievement, but as we know, achievement never comes without barriers. It never comes without failure. And I think there's something we'd love our listeners to hear about is has there been any particular barrier or any particular failure that has ultimately resulted in a lesson learned to help you move forward in a stronger, more prominent direction?
We really wouldn't have gone forward unless we made lots and lots of mistakes. And as Sally will confirm a bit later, we're not scared to take a chance. And especially if you're going to do business or do anything new, you're crazy if you think it's just going to work first time. So we made many different versions of things. We had bugs in our software. We had it not quite understanding the way that it worked. There were embarrassing things with one guy, Matt Target. He was a gold medal Olympian swimmer, and he was testing out the equipment, and I accidentally turned our device off while it was being used. I can't repeat the words that he said after that, but he wasn't impressed because he made a really hard effort. And so just from that one experience, we made it harder to turn off. So you had to hold two buttons down in a certain sequence to turn it off. In terms of the business, as Sally alluded to before, there are a lot of things we probably could have done, like the people that make the starting blocks in a swimming pool. It's way easier to make start blocks, and they're actually more expensive than our equipment. So there's, making some simple things without much risk, but it would have been really boring for us, and it wouldn't have been as enjoyable or refreshing. And a lot of people are in sport because they love working with people and love seeing people do their best, and the good feeling that you get from someone, doesn't matter how good they are, being able to do a PB. So you would be crazy if you ever gave up simply because you found a few setbacks, and it's often dozens and dozens of setbacks. And I think a really good modern day example is Elon Musk's approach to failure in his businesses. I mean, there are some things that he may not be too famous for in terms of his management style, but his preparedness to take risks and understand failure as part of success, I think, is something that everyone should take note of.
So about the in business, we just like before, I feel in our business not really successful because we already making so many good products, but we are just focused in the product and solve the problem, what actually the industry and sport industry requirement, but we haven't been good promotion and really helping the people. So like our stopwatch, that is like a digital stopwatch, completely different traditional stopwatch, can actually be used all by PE teacher and the coach, special, because it can doing like race star, all these things. We are beginning cooperate with EMPO, so we are focused high level, early sport, early swimming, and we not consider having money, but however, we did meet a lot of problem about how the fund required, and also the requirement going bigger and bigger. Oh, we need to service the high level Olympic coach and do the measurement. So that is made very, very hard.
Thank you, Sally. It's been really interesting to hear your thoughts, both Dean and Sally, on the way that you approach your product, and the way that you identified the problem was very scientific, it was very logical, but your attitudes, even though you're very technical, your attitudes are very similar to other guests that we have interviewed who are very, very sport focused, as in like they're world-renowned athletes. And so it's really refreshing to hear that technical people and sporty people all have the same attitudes to be working with the same goal. Just, Dean, we've been talking for a while, and I would really like to hear what is behind you, because it looks like a laboratory behind you. I was just wondering if you could maybe explain some of the things that you do in your sort of day-to-day, how you design this product, and the things that you're using to support athletes and coaches around the world.
Yeah, sure. Well, we develop hardware and software, so it's not just an app. We have to design custom hardware, so I have to develop circuit boards and whatnot. We do 3D printing. So this is a case from a new button, 3D printed case, and we need to make sure that's ergonomic. Like this has got a little shroud there, so if someone drops it, it won't accidentally press the button, and it's got to be comfortable for different sizes. So we've got to test all of that stuff. The environment that equipment works in is really tough. So you've got to make a lot of stuff waterproof. The sort of people that are involved in sport are not normally the sort of people that want to sit in front of a computer terminal all day. They want to wear shorts and a t-shirt and get outside in the sun and whatnot. And so when you develop a user interface or devices or buttons and stuff like that, we cannot think that someone's got a computer science degree and is going to operate it. It needs to be intuitive and simple. So when we decided to make, as Sally mentioned before, a completely reinvention of a stopwatch, it looks like a stopwatch with two buttons, but we actually changed the functionality of a button, the buttons on the stopwatch, and we stuck a microphone in here so that you could hold the stopwatch and talk into it, and that would come out remotely to a speaker or to a wearable device, and that was the communication problem. So we looked at, why do the buttons work the way they do on a stopwatch? So you can Google and find the history. That's because stopwatches were mechanical, and there was a clockwork mechanism, and when you reset it, you actually reset the spring. And even these days where you've got electronic stopwatches, here's an electronic one. That's probably a very common one. That's a Seiko stopwatch there. It replicates the mechanical stopwatch. And what happens is that when people use this stopwatch, if you don't reset the old time before you do a new time, it adds the old time on and it's rubbish. And so when we started our stopwatch, and we do in one button what you had to do with two, we made it reset when you press the button first so that you can never miss that mistake. Now, you couldn't do that with a mechanical one, but you can with an electronic one. We're just the first ones to dare to say, look, if you want to use our stopwatch, which is the most expensive stopwatch in the world, you've actually got to learn something. And if you don't like it, don't buy it from us. And again, it was about the ergonomics and the mistakes that people make in using a stopwatch.
No, I must hold my hand up and say the mistake that you've just described is a mistake that I've made countless times. And I think Tavis can say as well that pressing the wrong button at the wrong time is something that every PE teacher has made constantly, despite making that mistake over and over again. You just lose track. So to hear that someone's actually identified that consistent problem and has looked at the ergonomics and looked at that problem logically and designed something to stop people like me and so many other teachers or coaches out there making the same mistake is fantastic. And I'll probably be talking to you after this conversation to find out where I can get one of your stopwatches from.
I'm loving the science and the technology that you are bringing to the industry of sport. It's really, really interesting to hear. And as Simon says, that mistake that you've identified that is commonly made with the stopwatches, I think I've lost count with how many times I've actually said, sorry kids, could you go back to the start and do your race again? So you're saving me from myself with this technology. If we're going forward, I'd just like to ask what sort of advice you would give to other people that would like to sort of merge science and technology in the sporting industry. So what sort of advice would you give to sort of young upcoming people who are also sort of creative and scientific about how they could approach making a product or even designing it and So what would be the steps that they could do? What advice would you give them?
It's one word really, psychology, all right? These devices are tools that people use. And if you don't keep that in mind in everything you do, you will make a mistake. And so if people use it, they've got to want to be prepared to learn something new, accept change, and it's got to actually be enjoyable, and the results need to be motivational. And there's just so many things you could do with that. Our very first customer that Sally and I sold equipment to was a person that was world famous as well. His name was Forbes Carlyle, and he was the guy that invented interval training in the 1950s. He was probably in his early 90s when he bought the equipment from us. And you might think that technology is only being used by younger people, but when he saw it, and his wife, Ursula Carlyle, who's also got an MBE, and he was a coach at an Olympics, and then subsequently was an athlete at an Olympics. He was probably the only person in history that ever did that. But he invented interval training. So the pace clock and all of that was his invention. So when he saw us, he said, I'm going to have one. He actually ran 6 or 7 swim schools then. And he goes, all of my swim schools are going to buy your equipment. So here's our customer number one. He would be making suggestions about this or that, some things that I couldn't have a hope in hell of changing. But he was like that his whole life. And you can see why he was an innovator in sport in the way that he was.
For me, I think I would like to say action and be yourself, be your own coach. So learn anything from actions.
Yes, do it yourself. So I did a coaching course and coached myself so I could understand firsthand how any equipment we make could be used. We tested the equipment on ourselves, especially the wearable device. And if you don't even try it on yourself, it's very hard to expect other people to do it. So experimenting, getting feedback from other people is really important on anything you do.
I absolutely love that. I love the idea of not being afraid to experiment and immerse yourself in what it is you're doing, really understand it. And I think one of the really key things I've picked up on from both of you was this importance of the psychology element of what it is you do. And you're absolutely right. We tend to see people and technology as separate things, one or the other. But you're saying that ultimately technology is used by the individual, and as such, psychology is absolutely key in identifying what motivates us and how the technology can be adapted to again be used. I mean, I'm a victim of I'm one of those individuals that has bought the newfangled fantastic piece of technology and thought, this is great, this is going to change everything I do. And then I find it too difficult to use. I'm not motivated to use it, and it ends up being an incredibly expensive ornament or kind of a book stop in my office, because again, as you say, that the psychology of its creation didn't take into account the person buying it and the ease of use or the ergonomic use of it. So that's interesting. I never saw it in that way, but listening to what you're saying is really kind of really informative, really picking out some key things that I think everyone or anyone listening and thinking how they can come into the world of sport and technology. I think that's for me the biggest thing. That is knowing your audience, knowing your customer, knowing the people who are going to use your technology and adapting it accordingly. And I do love the fact that you were your first test subjects. You didn't pick your children or you picked some friends. You were like, we're going to test it. We're going to see. I hope no one got electrocuted or anything worse than that with early models. Have we had any incidences where early models might have caused a few problems?
We did use our kids as guinea pigs. And I remember it wasn't working properly. I said, you're going to have to do that 800-meter swim again and whatnot. So they were pretty unimpressed. But in what you just said about the expensive ornaments, I've been to hundreds of schools and swimming clubs over the last 10 years. And often I ask, what have you got in the top drawer? And they'll open the drawer and there'll be all the failed bits of tech, starting from, Fitbit trackers and whatnot like that. My fear is one day, or I visit somewhere and our stuff's in that drawer. So that's my biggest fear, that it ends up in that top drawer.
It certainly sounds like that fear is driving both yourself, Dean, and Sally, to make sure that the technology is accurate or specific enough or usable, that hopefully it won't end up in the top drawer, as you call it. So we've heard an awful lot about what it is you've done, and it sounds all absolutely amazing. It sounds like you've had an amazing journey. My next question really is to do with the future. So what's next? What's the big dreams? What's next for yourself, Sally, and for yourself, Dean? Where do you see your company going beyond today?
For the future, I want really for the student can really enjoy the individual sport as a team sport, and also they can choose the stay going challenge with individual sport and set to the goal and improve themselves. So I did really enjoy for sport educations for children's going. So we want our sport technology and equipment and service can be used and provide for all the school sport.
Yes, and in addition to that, when you do sport at school, and I didn't have a good experience at school with sport, I hated it. Even though I was quite good at a lot of sports, I hated the fact that the people that got the ribbons got the attention and everyone else didn't. And I did distance running, and there might be 100 people in the race. And so I vowed to myself that when we do anything to do with sport, and Sally and I were on a committee that ran cross country for Little Athletics for a few years, I wanted the person that came 93rd to have just the same experience as the person that came third. And I wanted them to have a reason to come back to the next race. And again, that's back to the psychology. Why would you come back if you came 93rd? Why would you come back again? And what can we do to make you want to come back again? And I'm sure that's the dream and aim of people that are involved in school sport everywhere, because not everyone's going to come third.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, both of you. I mean, that is, we're very fortunate, myself and Tavish, to be involved in school sport and physical education. At this time, it's very much undergoing a revolution. With concept learning, thematic learning, pathway learning, where, as you say, there's so many people out there that unfortunately have very, very poor experiences of PE lessons or sports lessons at school. And we are very fortunate that there's a lot of individuals out there who have allowed us to change the way we think and again, involve every child. Sport for all is something a lot of us are very passionate about. And to hear that the technology that yourself, Dean, and Sally are creating is only going to help support us in doing or striving towards that 100% engagement and having every child see PE and sport as fun, as enjoyable, as something they wish to continue on with long after they leave the classroom, and long after they have their own children, and throughout life. So what we're looking to develop as lifelong learners. And coming back to what you've said, I love the idea that both yourself and Sally, you are helping people like me and Tavis and Gavin create these lifelong learners. So on behalf of all the PE teachers, thank you, because we, from talking to you and seeing what you're doing, you are helping us to gain that ever elusive 100% engagement, 100% enjoyment in lessons and beyond lessons, in after school activities and sports clubs and so on and so forth. And I've written down something I've picked up from both of you just now as we were talking. And I think it is key for anyone listening to hear that what you're trying to do, and a number of other individuals are trying to do, is create sporting technology that supports the participation, not necessarily the achievement, but the participation at all levels. And as a result, giving every individual a reason to enjoy sport, to love sport, but more importantly, keep playing sport. And for me, I think that's the biggest learn I'm going to take away from speaking to both of you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, in the past, there were technical issues that made it, if you were one teacher and you had 50 kids out on the oval, it's very hard for you to give them each an individual experience and to keep track of everything or organise them. So pretty much all of our technology, even including our wearables, are not designed in the same way that like an Apple Watch is or a fitness band. They were purely a personal tracker, sports tracking device, if you like. Whereas every device that we do is actually networked. So they're wireless and they talk to each other. And that means we can have lots of people, lots of devices communicating with each other at the same time. So we can do a cross-country race with 200 kids running, or we can do a swimming competition with, lots of lanes or whatever it is. And the way that they can all talk and get information to each other. So ours has been from a systems point of view rather than a gadget point of view. So a lot of things you'll see, oh, this is going to be a game changer, this gadget or whatever that gadget. I'd really recommend people don't think about a gadget, think about a system, because a system works with a whole bunch of people, with a community, whereas a gadget pretty much by its definition supports an individual. And while gadgets are easier to sell, so getting back to what Sally said before, if we were just trying to make a buck, we'd do some gadget and then next year there'll be some smaller or better version of the gadget. So it's a lot harder to make 50 things talk to each other or wearables talk to each other. Or we can even do a virtual one where you can have 4 swimmers in one pool in one city, like swimming in real time against 4 swimmers in another pool in another city. So we link the two together via the internet. And so all of it is allowing a group of people to do something rather than just a single person. And as you all know, I'm preaching the converted here. If you want to keep doing sport, it needs to be social, it needs to be enjoyable, and it needs to be motivational. If you've got friends that do your sport with, you are way more likely to keep doing that sporting activity than if you did it by yourself. So why are we thinking about people doing sport? The only reason why you'd want to do stuff by yourself is, during COVID lockdowns or something like that, where you get on your indoor bike trainer and stuff like that. But even then, companies like Zwift and whatnot, they made that virtualize and made it so that even if you're by yourself at home, you could do something with other people as well. So all our stuff's really to do with a bunch of people rather than just one person.
That's great. I'm going to be using that tagline when I put this up on YouTube. Creating systems, not gadgets. Making sports sociable, enjoyable, and motivational for all. I like that. I like that a lot. So we are coming to the end of our interview, and what we like to do at the end of our conversations with all our guests is throw in a few little fun questions, try and draw out a bit of your personality. And I can't wait to hear the answers from both yourself, Dean, and Sally. So my question for both of you, and I'm gonna direct it towards Sally first, is if you weren't in this industry, you weren't in this profession, what else do you think you might be doing right now?
Doing my coaching myself, become a good leader for our business.
Okay, and Dean, what if you weren't creating these systems, if you weren't involved in sport, what else would you be involved in right now, do you think?
Because I enjoy inventing things and get pretty much bored about doing the status quo that everyone else did, I probably wouldn't make a very good employee. But so I'd probably be a consultant, I suppose. It's a challenge to solve a problem, whether it be technical or a human problem. And I'm sure, as you guys are involved in sport, you're also you're building lifestyles as well. So solving problems that helps build better lifestyles, where people I'm really happy if someone does swimming and uses our stuff, and then I see they've retired from swimming and they're still doing swimming. And that's true for the case of our daughter. I'm really pleased that they're doing it just because they like it, not because, they've been pushed into doing it. And therefore it's changed from a sport to a lifestyle. And, what more can you do for people other than give them good habits?
Dean, I haven't been able to write fast enough for all the gold nuggets that you were dispensing for us today. If I could just take a moment to go back a couple. And so I love the way that you are challenging yourself to solve problems and building lifestyles, and it's all fantastic to hear. I do have a strange question and I'll jump straight to it. And I'll pose it to you, Dean, if I could first. What is a strange habit or skill you have that has helped you on your journey?
I'm probably pretty lazy, so if I could automate something, I will. So, and I think a lot of people are in that boat, so that's probably not such a bad thing. and I really get bored easily doing the same thing. So I actually did adult learn to swim lessons, and because Sally wanted me to teach her swimming, but she said, "You're not going to teach me swimming unless I know that you know how to swim properly first." And in doing the swim lessons, it was just so boring going up and down following a black line. So I really wanted to do something that would make it more interesting. So I really get bored easily. I would make a terrible accountant.
Sally, would you like to jump in and also share a strange habit or skill that you have that has helped you on your journey?
I want to actually, so I'm very nervous because of the language background. I'm feeling I'm not very good with the language. So I from China to here, and also in the sport industry, when I was involved, I'm very nervous to joining about the community and anything. So, but now after doing all these things, I feeling since I'm learning a lot how to do the business, and more from say how to really not a teacher, is created a better environment for our children to go in. I actually not target mother. I never push my children and do study. I think even our children's, however, they're still very good. That is from the way, and also the way I will come in. I like to really, because of my first bachelor degree is physics teachers. So I was very enjoy in my life. I know the sport is really can give myself very good habit to going to challenges myself. And also when my daughter, one thing that she was mentioned very clear, he said, "Oh, I don't want to become a better person." She like to stay in the middle. So then I can have more friends, the top good friend and the bottom friend. So she can like to make the middle. However, when she was doing the swimming, when he stand in the sport, since that she changed. She said, "I need to win." For me, so I will love and continue to doing education. I like Australia sport education, and I want these things to go to China.
Sally, it's so interesting and lovely to hear about your growth mindset that you keep going. And even though you feel a sense of nervousness and maybe there's a chance or a risk of failure, that you keep pushing yourself to do the task, to take on this action. And the way that you describe your daughter, who it feels like she's also picked up on this great habit. So really, really thank you for sharing that. Dean, thank you for sharing about how your boredom, how boredom and laziness is pushing you forward to automate and strive for a better lifestyle, so that people can transition sport from just a participation or a one-time action into something that is built in as a habit into their lifestyle that improves their quality of life. So really, really thank you. This whole talk, it's been inspiring. It's really great to hear your dedication to understanding the sporting athletes so that you can make better products, that you can help other people sort of achieve their goals. Yeah, and as you said, it's all about being inclusive, bringing in people so that they will want to repeat their action. You mentioned the cross-country runner, the person coming in 93rd, and it's not about the winner, but it's about that participation and how they're going to repeat and also grow. So really, really thank you so much for your time and effort in your industry, and for sharing your journey with us today.
Thank you for listening to us.
And again, a huge thank you from me. I've taken some really key points away. And one I'd love to leave all the listeners with is solving problems leads to better lifestyles. I think that one came from yourself, Dean. And I think that's a really good quote to finish the interview on. So again, from Sporting Directions team, thank you ever so much for your time.